All right, first off, for some review. If I just said y equals x squared plus 6x plus 1, you know you can't factor this, right? Can you in your head go like, x and plus and plus, and that's not going to factor, is it? Does that mean it doesn't have any x-intercepts? No, it might still have x-intercepts. It's just that it doesn't factor, so I can't find them that way. So what works to find the x-intercepts all the time, every single time? The quadratic formula. So I'd like to take just a second and say x equals negative b. Can you finish it?
Yes, go ahead.
So x equals negative b. Carlos, what comes next? Just a little bit more. That's the little bit more. X equals negative b plus or minus square root. Do you know a little bit more, Luke?
B squared
Minus.
4ac.
Very good. That blue part right there, that's a lot of what today is about, is that blue part. All over 2a. All right. Now, here's my question. If this thing will figure out the answers to this, what is it figuring out? It's figuring out the solutions. But we don't even know if there's any real solutions, because couldn't this thing look, well, I know it has a y-intercept of 1. Couldn't it possibly look like this where it doesn't have any solutions? It might. I mean, I don't know what it looks like. I haven't graphed it yet, so I'm not sure, but that would have no solutions. Couldn't it also have a y-intercept of 1 and have 2 solutions, like if it went like that? You know what I mean? It could have 2 solutions. Isn't it even possible that it could have exactly 1 solution if it touched down here, like for example? It still goes through 1. So there's 3 different ways that parabola could be. You could have no solutions, or 1 solution, or 2 solutions. And what tells us is this blue thing here. Think about it for a second. If that blue part comes out negative, do you get we're going to be doing the square root of a negative? And if you're doing a square root of a negative, that's not real. And that means it only has imaginary solutions. All right. So let's figure out that blue part. B squared minus 4ac. Well, what's a, b, and c? I'm going to remind you that there's a 1 in front of this. And a is 1. A is not 1x. A is just 1. A is 1. Well, then what's b? 6. And what is c? 1. So then I just have to put them in here. A is 1. So 1 goes here and here. And b is 6, so a 6 goes in here and here. And then c is 1, which is right there. This tells me what the answers are. This part, called the discriminant, will tell me how many answers there will be. So that's 36 minus 4, which would be 32. I just figured out that that whole thing is 32. 32 is then called the discriminant. If you do a discriminant, you are able to tell by that number how many answers there's going to be. How many answers do you think there's going to be from that number? If it's really 32, there's 2 answers. Yep. How do you know? Well, because you're going to do negative 6 plus that number and get an answer, divide it by 2. And then you're going to do negative 6 minus that answer and divide it by 2. And then you'll get your 2 answers. Those are the 2 answers. What if this had come out negative? Then how many solutions would I have? None. None. I would have no solutions. If that was negative, there's no real solutions. You're making up stuff at that point. You're getting imaginary. solutions. All right, one little side note, a lot of little things to remember. If you do get imaginary answers, there's always going to be two. Let me explain why. If I have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of, I'm going to make it blue again, b squared minus 4ac, that's the discriminant, all over 2a. If this part comes out negative, then you're going to have to do plus the square root of that and minus the square root of that. You'll get two answers. Why wouldn't you always get two answers, though? Because sometimes it's not positive and the discriminant's not negative. What's the only number that's not positive and not negative? 0. If this number is equal to 0, then adding 0 or subtracting 0 will get you the exact same thing, won't it? And then there'll only be one answer. All right. There is the power lesson, and in theory, if you were a super genius, you'd already have it. Everybody write this down. B squared minus 4ac. It's called the discrim. I'm not even going to spell it all the way. It's called the discriminant. Usually we call it D to make it even simpler. Okay? That's the discriminant. Now if D is bigger than 0, then your square root is going to be square root of something bigger than 0, which means there's going to be two answers. If D is less than 0, then you're doing the square root of this, and it's negative. And the square root of a negative means there's no solutions. And if it's not positive and it's not negative, then what does D have to be? 0. And it's tempting to think there's 0 solutions, but that's wrong. If D, the discriminant, is 0, if this part of the quadratic formula comes out to 0, then you're doing plus and minus the square root of the discriminant, and the discriminant's 0, and so that means there'll only be one solution. There's 3 kind of parabolas. Ones that have 2 solutions, ones that don't have any solutions, and the ones that have 1 solution, and that are the most special kind because their solution is the vertex. All right, that was a lot. Imagine I was giving out a candy bar to anybody who could recite the quadratic formula. Not right this second. I'm going to give those out later in a fun way, you'll see. But I'm just curious, how many of you actually are positive you know the quadratic formula? You got it? Yeah. All right. That is like 2/3 of the room. And just so you know, the rest of you that don't have it down, you have to have it down. You've got to memorize that one. We're not going to give it to you. All right. This little discriminant thing, that's just part of the quadratic formula. It's the part that's underneath the root. If I asked you to find the discriminant of this equation, would you be able to do it? Did you write down what the discriminant was? Take a second. If you know what the formula for the discriminant is, just stick in A, B, and C. I made them as easy a numbers as I could. I made it as easy as 1, 2, 3. It's actually 1, 3, 2. But anyways, take a second and figure out the discriminant. What's the D? What's the D for this problem? Do it on paper, on virtual paper. I'm going to ask you to show your D to the kid next to you. And then, this is the more important part, it's telling you how many solutions. I have no idea how many solutions this has. I honestly don't. Okay, I just figured it out quick in my head, and I now know how many solutions there are. There's either 0 solutions, which means the solutions are imaginary, or there's 1 solution, which means it touches the x-axis just once, or there's 2 solutions like most of them have. So please figure out the discriminant. And like the answer is 7. The discriminant is just a number. And then tell the kid next to you how many solutions you think this has then. All right, I'm gonna pause for a second. You talk to the kid next to you. All right, so I know there's always a small subset of kids who think you're supposed to square root it. You don't. It's just b squared minus 4ac. It's true that in the big formula, it gets a square root. Here, it does not. All right, so then what's b? Well, b is 3, so you go 3, and a is 1. It's right there. And c is 2. So you should have said 9 minus 8, which is 1. Now, the kids who thought you square rooted it, you actually got lucky this time, because if you square root 1, it's still 1, you know, like they would have lucked out on this one. But don't square root it, okay? Discriminant being 1 tells you there's 2 solutions. Raise your hand if you knew that. Awesome, you've learned the basics of discriminant then. All right, now, here's the trickier part. What are the solutions? Hint. That big old formula that I said, did you memorize it yet? Do the whole formula except, hint, you've already done the discriminant. You don't have to do b squared minus 4ac again. You already did it. So, x equals negative b plus or minus square root of the discriminant, which we already did, and it came out to 1. All over 2a, which is 2 times 1, which is 2. And b was 3. Now, there's two kinds of kids. The kinds of kids who think you would leave it like that, and the kinds of kids who can get all the way down and tell me, one of the answers is this, and one of the answers is that. I want to know what the 2 answers are. You don't just leave it like this. You can simplify that. Take a second and talk to the kid next to you about what the 2 answers are. Is there anybody in here that is allergic to nuts? Yeah. All right. I have a Snickers here for the first person to tell me the number of legs on an octopus minus the number of horns on a unicorn. All right. Except it was a trick question. It's not 7. Yes? Nope.
-1.
Do explain it.
Because there's no legs on an octopus, it's just tentacles.
Boom. Nice job. Okay. I'll be doing a random question every now and then. If you want Halloween candy, I've got some. All right. So here we go. Did you do -3 plus 1, which would be -2, and divide it by 2, and then you get -1? Raise your hand if you had -1 as one of your answers. Okay, good. What's the other answer? Just say it. All right, good. So those are my 2 answers. How would I have known there was going to be 2? Because the discriminant was positive. Because that number was positive, I knew there was going to be 2. Okay. All right. We need to review a little bit now. And then I'll come back to this new stuff and see if you still remember it 5 minutes later. Or if having so much candy over Halloween time, if nothing else, the leftover Halloween candy has destroyed your memory. Can you remember how to do half and square? Complete the square and figure out what the vertex is on this stuff. The test is not coming this week because they have a really weird week. I know Friday, the day where we teachers have to do a bunch of classes and you guys get to just not have school, but what's Thursday this week? Isn't it like the end of the quarter?
Yeah.
So bottom line, you guys have Monday through Wednesday. So, test is not this week, but it is the beginning of next week. All right, half n squared. Half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. If I add 16, you can't just add 16 to something. Changes it totally. But if you minus 16, that counteracts it. Now it's still equal to what it used to be equal to. And that part factors. And if you can factor it, you should. X plus 4 quantity squared. And then those two together make minus 15. And how many of you had that right? Raise your hand if you did. Cool. Why do you even do that? Because it tells you the blank. The vertex. It tells you the vertex. All right. Now, there's a surprising number of people who cannot tell me what the axis of symmetry is. I want you to all write down x equals blah. You either know the axis of symmetry right now or you don't. And I'm going to ask you to talk to the kid next to you, and if they don't know, explain it to them. What is the axis of symmetry? Talk to them, please.
Oh, you did now?
All right.
I was.
Do you agree it was -4, -15 for the vertex? And then you just grab the x of that, and you've got the axis of symmetry. And I heard a kid explaining it's because it's the axis of symmetry goes through the vertex. And that's a good answer. Okay, good. All right, was there a little tiny formula you could have used to get that? There was. Write this down again, x squared plus 8x plus 1. And this time, if I just asked you, and all I asked you was for the axis of symmetry, there's a little formula for that. I taught it to you before you left on Friday. I wrote it on the board, but it's gone now. Do you remember it? Who thinks they have it? Remember, who thinks they have it? Okay, we got like 6, 8 people. All right. If you're like, I don't remember this, negative b over 2a. Now you might feel like, wait a minute, isn't that right out of the quadratic formula? Yes, it is. And I want to have you see why that kind of goes together. You know, in the quadratic formula, I must have written it down a whole bunch of times so far today, but I'm going to write it again. X equals negative b, and then I'm going to change colors. Plus and minus the square root of, I'm going to change colors again. B squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That right there is the x of the vertex, and it's the axis of symmetry. And process, see if you can handle this. If this is 0, if the b squared minus 4ac thing is 0, do you get why your parabola answer is the vertex? Because if this is 0, that all cancels, and that's the x of the vertex. See? It's on the axis of symmetry. It all makes sense to me, anyways. Okay. So if this part is 0, then you don't have two answers. It's not plus and minus anymore, because plus and minus 0 don't do anything. So then it's just one answer, and that's the vertex. All right, so now let's see. If I give you this equation, y equals x squared minus 6x minus 7. First thing you can tell me is how many solutions does it have? You have a new tool for doing that called the discriminant. Do that first. That'll tell you how many solutions you're going to have. Let's say it comes out to 12. Oh, that's a positive number, so I'm going to have 2 solutions. That kind of thing. So figure out how many solutions you're going to have. Then use the whole quadratic formula to tell me what the 2 solutions are. I'm going to pause while you figure this out. 2 things. First, how many solutions are there from using the discriminant? Then use the whole quadratic formula, which includes the discriminant you already did, and get the actual answers. So I could just factor this. What are you doing, Mr. Server? You told us to find the answers. If you can factor it, you should. Because look, the answers are x equals -1 and x equals 7. See how much faster that is than the quadratic formula? Who got the quadratic formula to give you those 2 answers? That's even more impressive because that's way harder. The quadratic formula is x equals negative b. What's negative b in this case? Negative of negative 6. So 6 plus and minus square root of b squared, which is 36, minus 4ac, 4 times 1 times c, which is negative 7, all over 2a, which is 2 times, what's a? A is 1. All right, so I'll just show you how you should have got it. Plus and minus square root of 7 times 4 is 28. What is 36 plus 28? I think it's 64, isn't it?
Yep.
All right. So if they had asked you what's the discriminant, you would have said 64. What does the discriminant tell you? That there's 2 answers, because that's positive. If you actually divide by 1, does it really do anything? No. So I'm just not gonna, I'm gonna not divide by 1. So then it's 6 plus and minus 8, and that's 6 plus, okay, something's going wrong. I'm not, well, oh, it's all over 2a. It's not over 1. It's all over 2a, which is 2 times 1. Thank you. So then I got to put 6 plus 8 and divide it by 2. There we go. I knew it wasn't right because I knew the answers. They were here. All right, so back to 6 plus 8 is 14, and 14 divided by 2 is 7. See how I got that first answer? 6 plus the 8 divided by 2. Now I'm going to do 6 minus the 8, which is negative 2, divided by 2. What's negative 2 divided by 2? It's negative 1. 7 and negative 1. There's the easy way with factoring or the hard way with the quadratic formula. But the thing is, not everything factors. That won't always work. But this will always work, even when the answers are imaginary. So there is a question that we expect you to be able to do. I practiced it with you before. Let's see if you've forgotten it. If I had 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 6, that's supposed to be a 6, negative 64 all over 2, would you be able to simplify that? Take a second and do it. Who in here handed out candy on Halloween? Raise your hand if you did. All right, keep your hands. Don't add more hands. Who else handed out candy? All right. The square root of negative 64, well, the square root of 64 is 8, and then you do I, because this is really square root of negative 1 and the square root of 64, so it's 8i. 6 plus minus 8i over 2. And then, can you do anything more? Yes, you can. If you got to here, good for you, but you got to still finish it. They both have a 2 in them. I'm going to divide them by 2, but you can't just divide something by 2 unless you also multiply it by 2. So I'm factoring out the 2. And then this part will be 3 plus and minus 4i. And those cancel, and there's your answer. Because they're imaginary, do you remember me saying that there would always be, if there's imaginaries, there's always 2 imaginaries? I usually use that moment to remind you, how many of you are licensed drivers now? Raise your hand if you are a licensed driver. All right, there's like 4 or 5 of you. Eventually, you will have an opportunity to hit a deer because you're driving along and all of a sudden a deer jumps in front of you. And I've hit birds before and it's sad, but it doesn't really, scare you that much. But hitting a deer, holy cow. So the reason I'm bringing this up is if you see one deer, there's usually 2 deer because they run along in little packs. Like it could be the mother and like a doe and a fawn that goes together. Oftentimes there's 2, and sometimes there's like 10, but If you see one, it's very likely there's another one. So if you ever like driving along and all of a sudden you see a deer like go across the road, don't think, oh, I'm safe, I won't hit it. No, he's got a friend who usually follows right behind him. So anyway, watch out for the second deer. When there's imaginary roots, there's always two. Always. There's never ever just one imaginary. There can be one real root. There'll always, if there's imaginaries, there's always two. Why? Because there's a plus and a minus in front of the square root. And if you got square root of a negative number like this, there will always be two answers then. Get what I mean? Once with plus and once with minus. Okay. All right. Last melon. You're in the middle of a problem like this. You're going to have one just like this on your homework. And then they're going to say, what are the decimal answers for it? A lot of kids just get totally stumped. Act like I'm your calculator. What would you type into me?
Square root of 56.
Yes. I will use my calculator. What is the square root of 56?
The square root of 56 is approximately 7.4833.
Good enough. Now do you get what you could do to get the rest of the answer? Well, if you're already allowing us to use the calculator, then 7 plus 7.48. Remember, hit enter before you divide by 8. Otherwise, your calculator will think you want it to do this. If you just say 7 plus 7.48 divided by 8, it'll go do this first because of the order of operations. You know what I mean? So you got to hit enter after doing your add there. All right, so you can get your answers that way for the decimals. There's just one question, and there's one on the test too, where we expect you to go get decimal answers for it. So just take your square root, put it in the calculator, get your answer. Now I trust that you're not going to cheat on your homework, but on the test, just so you know, you won't have a graphing calculator. You will have to know how to put this into a scientific notation calculator. If I were you, I'd practice up on the Desmos test mode. It's an app on your calculator. You can open up Desmos. Just maybe practice that on your homework today, because you won't be able to just use any calculator you want. You're going to have to use that one because it has a scientific notation mode. All right, good. Let's go to your very first problem on your homework, which has got graphs, and it's like, does this one have 0 roots or 1 root or 2 roots? And then you'll have to like match them up. The one that doesn't touch, that has 0 roots, aka x-intercepts. The one that touches once, that has 1 root. And there's some that touch twice. They have 2. And the discriminant that goes along with it, here, the one that's imaginary, this has a negative discriminant. This kind, the green kind, that has a positive discriminant. And the red kind is the most special one. The discriminant is 0. And it has only 1 root or solution. All right, that should help you answer question number 1. And now you have a whole bunch of time. I hope you utilize it. And that's all I got for you for the video for today.